Welcome back to Squawk on the Street. Verizon this morning announcing a deal under which it will be acquiring BlueJeans Network. That is an enterprise-grade video conferencing and event platform, perhaps a well-timed acquisition. Price tag not announced, although hearing it perhaps is in around the $400 million range. Let's bring in Hans Vestberg, the company's CEO, who joined us about 3 weeks ago, of course, to talk about the ever-evolving landscape in terms of our economy. Hans, always good to have you. And let me start off with this morning's acquisition. Was it something you had planned previous to the crisis, or is it a result of the crisis?
We actually started to have a conversation with BlueJeans for almost 1 year ago, as we saw our customers going on this digital transformation and digital journey. And as you know, our Verizon Business Group is serving 98% of the Fortune 500. So in those discussions, of course, enterprise-grade video conferencing come up all the time. Since then, we have been testing, of course, the system, both from security and from features and functionality. And we actually started selling it to our customers in Q4 last year. So, and then we continued that discussion, and we came to a conclusion that it was even better for us to acquire it. And of course, with this COVID-19, it's been accentuated, but this was very much part of our strategy of Verizon Business Group. It was part of our strategy to actually have bolt-on acquisition in our business group, as well as was also part of our 5G strategy, because ultimately video conferencing and video will be enormously important in 5G.
Sure. Fully understood. Now, of course, the importance of this business has only been, well, magnified tenfold, it would seem, in these last few weeks, Hans, and will be with us even when, conceivably, we do go back to work, the importance of being able to video conference. Are you planning on ramping up the business quickly? Are you going to be investing? You know, are you going to be able to compete right off the bat with the likes of WebEx or Zoom or Microsoft Teams and its video ability?
No, the product is already they're really good. I mean, they have a broad array of customers, almost 15,000 customers already. And of course, some of our customers are already using it. So yes, we will be able to, as soon as they're closing this, we will be able to offer this to all our customers. And we will go give them the choices, of course. But we see that BlueJeans is a really good product, feature rich and all of that. And we're going to build it into our universal communication suite. So it's going to be very easy for our customer to integrate it.
Yeah, speaking, of course, of where we find ourselves right now in terms of your customers and the world, 3 weeks ago, you were talking about the fact that actually Verizon had increased CapEx. Are you still on that mode, Hans? Have you pulled back at all at Verizon in terms of spending money, essentially, given what we've seen right now?
No, we are on the same path. We of course are attending this crisis both for a safe and healthy for our employees, but at the same time we understand how important our networks are. So we still have some 20,000 people in the front line, seeing that the networks are up. And as I have reported so many times, the surge of data and video from home and VPN, gaming has been enormous. Now it has flattened out, but we have managed that with a very robust network. So we actually are doing a job that is extremely important for the country. So we're continuing to invest. And this, of course, is a proof point that we also make acquisition in these times. And we think it's important for the companies like ours that we continue to keep this country going with the broadband and the mobility.
Hans, Jim, always good to see him. Great to see Verizon doing so good.
Jim.
Best stock, unbelievable stock. We still care about that, not just about COVID. But I did want to ask you something. BlueJeans has been around. I've been around for 11 years. I know initially they were a bridge between different video systems, early cloud play. But what I'm trying to figure out is where will they fit in against Zoom? Eric Yuan is he's a dynamic figure. I know they had security problems, but you also have to admit they have taken America by storm. And then WebEx has the enterprise. Cisco does such a good job. Where can this company fit in the equation?
First of all, BlueJeans already have a customer base of 15,000 customers, all the way from small and medium to some really large enterprises. We're going to see that, first of all, we're going to continue to support them 100%. Then, of course, we see an opportunity with our distribution channel. Remember what we have the best network, the best distribution channel, and I have to say, a very great brand. That's our core competitive advantages. And of course, when we bring in BlueJeans to us, that's open up new opportunities that BlueJeans didn't have before. And then on top of that, I can build it into our 5G products that will be enabled with video over time, because so much of the low latency, the throughput, and the speeds is needed to have this on the edge and video offering on the edge. So I see this is both as something we can do right now, but definitely something we're also spinning for the future.
And Hans, you must feel like I did. Yesterday I was on all the different bank conference calls. Goldman Sachs said something. Almost every single person working at Goldman Sachs works at home. Almost every single person. This happened overnight.
Yes.
Bank of America,
Correct.
the same. I mean, if you don't appeal to these people, you're going to lose some big business. The world has changed in the last 6 weeks, hasn't it, sir? We're not going to work in the same place that we did 6 weeks ago.
No, we're going to have a new normal. I think the usage of these tools that we now have so successfully deployed in this country, and we work with all these banks that basically have all their traders, everyone working from home, that has gone seamless in this country. And I have to say that also attribute to how this country has set up the rules and regulation for investments for companies like Verizon. We have spent between 17 to 18 billion US dollars in our network the last 4 or 5 years. That is paying off right now. You cannot fix this when this happens. And that's why we're handling it so well in this crisis with the broadband. The mobility networks are keeping up, even though we see this surge of data. So I'm proud of my engineers. I'm proud of what they have done, and they still are doing. They are out there in the front line every day to see that these networks are continue to hum and have high quality.
Hans, I know you were on the call yesterday with the president, along with many other leaders of various businesses around the country. When it comes to this question that was apparently being explored of how to open up the economy, how quickly to do so, given your viewpoint and the fact that you have employees all over the country, what is your sense here in terms of our ability to get back to work, and what, if anything, came out of that call yesterday?
I think that everyone, all the large corporations, wants to open the economy as soon as possible. But on the other hand, we also understand the most important here is the safe and healthy of the citizen of the United States or for our employees. That's the number one. So I think the conversation was a lot about what corporations are doing, where they see progress, and the initiatives they're doing. Like us in Verizon, we haven't closed. We need to keep it up, but still keep the safe and healthy for our employees. And I think that gradual or staggered way of coming back to the economy will be important. Then it's, of course, very different for different industries. I mean, the airline industry is very different from the telecom industry. So it has to be a staggered coming back to the economy, both geographically but also industry-wide. But I think that it's clear that everyone wants to get back as soon as possible, but only when you can have the safe and healthy of the citizens and our own employees.
Right. You mentioned safety, of course, and it's our understanding that testing did come up often during that call. Is that the case? Were a lot of other CEOs, or perhaps you as well, saying, hey, we need more testing before we can open up this economy?
I think that was sort of a discussion, what will be needed for coming back 100%, that testing is important. Vaccine is important over time. So a lot about around that, how that can scale quicker. And I was on the call with the pharmaceutical CEOs. Of course, they talked about what they're doing and where they are in both testing and vaccine and all of that. So I think, again, it was a call to be sharing what different industries are doing in order to make this, and what the private sector need to do in order to help this coming back to a new normal in this economy.
Hey, Hans, it's Carl. There are a lot of conspiracy theories around the world about the relationship between 5G and the virus. I just wonder, can you comment on some of those, as crazy as they may sound? And is there political risk to 5G embedded in that?
There's no correlation at all between 5G and coronavirus. It's just fake news. We have seen some of those articles coming out here and there, but we just need to be very clear that there's no correlation in between the two. And we're going to combat that with our communication and the industry's communication and with health organizations' communication.
Hans, I asked you 3 weeks ago what you were seeing from your customer base, in terms of churn, in terms of inability to pay. You said it was too early. What are you seeing now 3 weeks later?
It's still too early because I have an earnings call next week, so I need to wait until I comment. But again, what I've said all the time before, we have seen areas where we have surge, where, of course, a lot of enterprises are need to move their traffic to home, etc. On the other hand, we have an unemployment that we've never seen in this country. Of course, that is impacting people to be able to pay. On the other hand, we already have Keep America Connected as a principle, meaning that we're not disconnecting any residential or SMB for late payments or anything like this. And I think that's the right thing to do in this time. It's an unprecedented time. It's a crisis that doesn't have a playbook, but you need to think about the society and your customers in this as well.
Yeah. All right. Here's a question that I would typically ask you, not in another time, which is, since you last came on, T-Mobile and Sprint finally finalized their deal. They are now one company, apparently going to be competing rather hard in 5G. There are those who continue to say your reliance on millimeter wave spectrum for your 5G is not going to cut it, Hans, and that they are in a much better spectrum position at T-Mobile. How do you respond to those criticisms, and how do you see the competition evolving now that there are three big players in the U.S.?
First of all, it's no surprise. It has been in the works for 2 years, so it's no surprise that they came together. I think that we feel really good about our assets. I just want to remind you of what we have said. This year, we're basically going to do 5 times more 5G radio-based stations. Number 2, we're going to have more than 60 cities covered millimeter wave. We're also going to do national coverage this year. So I feel that we are in a very, very good spot with 5G. Remember, we were first with 5G home. We were first with the 5G mobile mobility smartphone. We were first with the 5G mobile edge compute. I think my team is just doing an enormous job, and we are not going to let that lead to fail. So we're just going to continue to execute. And you heard about what we do with the CAPEX. So I feel good about what our team is doing. Competition is always going to be there.
Finally,
it's always going to be in there.
In terms of the 5G cycle, itself, Hans, though, has it been slowed down because of what's going on? I mean, you've got a lot of your stores closed. I assume people can still buy phones online, but is the cycle itself been thrown off because of the virus?
Of course, you see a slowdown on when you only have 30% of our own stores open, and we serve basically critical needs only. So that you can say. I don't think that take anything away from a 5G cycle that is so exciting, and many people really would like to have it. And remember, it's business cases for enterprises, for society, for home broadband, and for mobility. So there are many different constituencies that will use our 5G as it's rolling out right now.
Hans, always appreciate your joining us. Hans Vestberg, the CEO of Verizon, which today announced its acquisition or definitive agreement to acquire the conferencing company BlueJeans Network.